Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. It's the exact same concept that I was mentioning a couple days ago. You know, the whole biological males competing in female sports? That kind of situation can only exist in a propaganda vacuum. It can only exist in a controlled environment where debate and discussion is censored or avoided. And it's the same thing with these leftist talking heads. Their entire careers, their entire beings, their reputations can only be maintained and protected if they avoid scrutiny, questions, and debates entirely. This applies across the left, from sleepy, creepy, piss-pants Biden, who avoids public questions like the damn plague, who simply doesn't do real interviews, or take questions from anybody who isn't pre-approved by his administration. It's every single one of these leftoids, but it's especially these fake news peddlers, mainstream media fake news merchants like Rachel Maddow, who craft this absolutely pathetic, pretentious image of honest, neutral journalists accurately reporting on stories, yet they're bought and paid for corporate mouthpieces who simply cannot exist outside of a very controlled corporate narrative bubble. In this viral moment, Rachel Maddow was heckled by online activist and editor at the Gray Zone News, Max Blumenthal, and the whole situation paints the perfect image as to why these people simply cannot be trusted. Let me show you guys exactly what I mean. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so let's first start off with the viral clip that's bouncing around Twitter. Rachel Maddow's doing an event at TrueCon 2023, going on and on about the threats of white supremacy, right-wing extremism, and the rise of MAGA Nazism. Completely ridiculous. And then this happened.
Bent on overthrowing the U.S. government. And members of Congress who were sympathetic.
Rachel, this speech is boring and paranoid. Can you explain why you promoted the Steele why did you promote the Steele dossier, which has been proven to be a lie? Why did you promote the lie of Russian bounties?
Come on, let's go.
Can you ever be held accountable for the lies you told Americans for years and years and years? You lied to Americans for years.
Let's go.
Silence is violence, Rachel.
You're out. You're out. It is bad.
Let's go.
Now, my first thought is that I wish Max Blumenthal worked a little harder to stay in front of that stage and continue shouting questions instead of letting security simply walk him out so effortlessly. But the confrontation itself, while enjoyable, isn't the main point. It's the constant smug arrogance and this controlled corporate environment that I find so deeply frustrating. How someone like Rachel Maddow, somebody with a documented history of misinformation, somebody who has dedicated her entire career to being a partisan liar spreading misinformation, someone who dedicated her show to a legitimate conspiracy theory for 4 years straight. I mean, this clip really puts it into perspective. This is an edit from one of Rachel Maddow's show.
Moscow, Moscow. The Russians in Moscow, Russia, Moscow, the Russian Moscow, Moscow, Russia, Moscow, Putin, Russia,
Putin, Kremlin, Russia, non-stop, every single night, never-ending, promoting a legitimately fake story. This is the person at TrueCon lecturing people about the political danger of misinformation and extremism. Give me a frickin' break. Rachel Maddow is a phony. She's an utter fraud, a corporate mouthpiece, a propaganda spreader who can only exist in these environments. Notice how she doesn't do debates. Notice how she doesn't actually address any of the criticisms lobbed in her direction. Notice how after 4 years of spreading Russia disinformation conspiracy theories, she's yet to even address it. All of a sudden, she just doesn't talk about Russia anymore. She's never addressed all the updates, the fact that she was wrong about pretty much everything. She simply forgot about it. That seems to me like the mark of a terrible human being. The simple fact is, I don't even necessarily regard her as a real, genuine human. She's a corporate pawn. That's kind of the irony of her whole persona. You know, this meme right over here actually really puts it into perspective. Rachel Maddow makes $30,000 a day pretending to be a progressive liberal while reading neoliberal corporatist propaganda off a teleprompter in between commercials commercials for big oil, big pharma, and the military-industrial complex. Far-left, progressive liberal Rachel Maddow, showing up as a keynote speaker at TrueCon 2023, sponsored by Lockheed Martin, One Medical, Miter Corp. In other words, sponsored by big healthcare, big pharma, the military-industrial complex, and arms dealers and weapons manufacturers. A real far-left progressive. Yeah, right. A phony, a fraud. Here's another great moment, which exposes Rachel Maddow for exactly who she is. This moment from the Jimmy Dore Show.
Who are you and how did you get into this echo chamber? That's what she's asking. Because that's all it is, right? And so then Max was hauled out, and here's how she handled it after Max got hauled out, right? And here's how she handles it, right? So they were cheering that Max left, and now she says this.
Coming to a Substack newsletter near you.
Got him.
That was her big comeback, her big dunk. Max Blumenthal asks her, will you ever take responsibility for pushing a phony Russia narrative and the Russian bounty's fake story? And her comeback was, coming to a Substack or Twitter post near you, or something along those lines. Wow, sick comeback. As if being an independent journalist whose speech isn't controlled by big pharma and big war is a bad thing. Are you paying attention, leftoids? Liberals? Far-left progressive types? Your MSNBC queen is a corporate hack, a paid shill, a paid mouthpiece. Not a real human being with real opinions, not a genuine, honest person, but a propaganda merchant, spreading lies, propaganda, misinformation to the benefit of a particular political party and the corporations that back them. I'm on the hashtag resistance side. I'm on Rachel Maddow's side. No, you're on Lockheed Martin's side. You're on Big Pharma's side, going after this perceived enemy. Oh, Rachel Maddow's taking on the MAGA cult and that terrible, evil, racist Donald Trump. Well, at least Donald Trump isn't a paid shill promoting George Soros and Charles Schwab's New World Order. Frickin' clowns. I've never seen a group of people so easily manipulated in my life. Here's a perfect example. Republicans love to vilify Rachel Maddow because a brilliant, accomplished, truth-telling lesbian scares the shit out of them. Really? Truth-telling? We're scared because she's a brilliant truth-telling lesbian? Like, what does that even mean? The reality is that this is projection. Leftoids fall for these brands and labels more than anyone else. That's why they bring up stuff like gender and sexual orientation. That's all you need to market somebody to them as on their side, as loyal, a truth-telling Democrat. Give me a frickin' break. It's all a calculated mirage. Tactics to manipulate the average leftist blue anon voter or MSNBC viewer. If we're talking about corrupt and unethical and lack of morals, Rachel Maddow is 100 times worse than Donald Trump is, yet from their perspective, Rachel Maddow is a truth-telling resistance fighter, and Donald Trump is the human embodiment of Adolf Hitler. It's completely ridiculous. Anyways, not much else to be said, just a viral moment, which I found was painting a clear picture. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe to the channel. Of course, you know, we'd love to have you here. Thanks for watching, folks, and I'll see you on the next one.